Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I will be taking you through how I make this cute jellyfish from shrink plastic. Disclaimer, I think this is more of an intermediate level project rather than beginner, just because it requires some special tools and requires some shaping of the plastic itself. But if you have done shrink plastic before, I would recommend you giving this a try because the result is stunning and it makes a great gift. I start with printing out a template, which you can find from my Etsy store, and you just have to trace the template onto the shrink plastic itself. For the jellyfish design, I found this picture of a jellyfish with stripy top, which I think would be really cool, and that's where I'm gonna base my design on. I use pencil crayon to start with the detail of the stripes. I use purple and red per the reference. Whatever you like, you can even try to make spotty jellyfish or those moon jellyfish that have a ring on top. After I finish with the pencil crayon, I switch to the chalk pastel or soft pastel. And I just kind of go over the design and use the smudging tools to smudge it. Or you can use your finger to blend the pigments together. Don't forget to outline your shrink plastic from the template, because when you remove the template, you would need this as a guideline to cut out the shapes. I use Posca, I think that's how it's called, Posca marker to add the gold trim to the jellyfish. Then I use tissue paper to clean excess pigment. As you can see from the template, the jellyfish body has two parts, which are the top hood and the bottom hood. For the bottom hood, I use X-Acto knife to score little lines for more details. I noticed that there's quite a bit of pigment on the paper from the cleanup, so I am using those pigment as part of the tentacles. I want my jellyfish to look semi-magical and glowy, so I'll be using a lot of pink and blue, which I think are fun contrasting colors and would really make my jellyfish pop. After finishing with the blend, I use pencil crayon again to go over with fine details. I also use the markers to go over it as well to get a little bit of metallic touch on the jellyfish. Get to outline because you would need that when you remove the template. I marked the center of the jellyfish so that I know where I'm going to be drilling holes for the thread to go in. Now I think we're ready for the next stage, which is to cut out the shapes. It might be a little tricky to cut out shrink plastic because they're not as flexible as paper, so I like to start with cutting them out in simple geometric shapes and then I trim them to the shape that I want later. Don't forget to drill holes for the thread to go in. I like adding a bit of waves on the top hood of the jellyfish because when you shrink it, it makes it look like it has some movement. Here's my heat gun for shrinking the plastic. I start with shrinking all the plastic first, and I will do the shaping later. I find that it's a bit easier. Make sure you wear proper protection because it can get really hot. Tentacles can be a little tricky because they like to fall onto themselves when you melt. Just make sure they don't hold that position for too long because they could melt into themselves. I twist it a little bit at the end just to give the tentacle a little movement. Just make sure you're doing it when it's still soft and hot. Now to the molding part. I reheat my piece again until it's softened, and then I press it with my molding tool to a soft surface like a sponge. There's a great YouTube channel that have lots of good information on shrink plastic called EmiMate, and she suggests that you could use a teaspoon or marbles to do the shaping. If the first shaping is not to your liking, you can always reheat it and shape it again. This step is optional. I like to coat the back of my piece with UV resin. This will keep the color intact longer and it would make the piece look more finished. The other option would be using acrylic spray or any coating spray would do. Now come the hardest part in my opinion, which is to attach the tentacles to the jellyfish itself. This time I use resin to cure so that they stick together. In the past I've used glue, but I find resin cure and dry much faster and it's a bit easier to work with. But give it a try. If you have a suggestion, please let me know. You may notice a little piece of green tape that I put there too. That's just to prevent the resin from running to the hole that I drill. Alright, now all the pieces are ready to be assembled. I use glass beads as a stopper to separate different layers of the jellyfish, and I use this clear fishing cord as a string. I thread it through the first layer of the jellyfish, then I tie a couple knots on the first bead as a stopper. As you can see, I'm not very good at tying knots yet, so this is why you see all this chaos here. At the end of the cord, I tie the gem that I want to go in, and there it is, first layer. And I do the same thing for the top part of the string, which I tie another bead in. This would act as a stopper that separates the top hood of the jellyfish to the bottom hood. And lastly, I make a hoop with the cord and I add my last bead, which goes on top of the top hood of the jellyfish. This would act as a stopper. And there it is, our serene, magical jellyfish. You can take this project to the next level by adding clear cords as tentacles. This will give it more movement. Or you can add glitter on the jellyfish itself, make it more shimmery and shiny. Thanks for watching. You can get this jellyfish template from my Etsy store, Addy Design Studio. Until next time, bye bye.